This video will be showing you how to make this model float plane. Now to get the material and get started, you'll need the instructions from Mr. Mullet, and you can find the material that you need either from Mr. Mullet or you can get it yourself. If you go in the shop and you go down here behind drill press number 3, you will find a shelf that has the material on it. We have the wings here, we have the stabilizers, the pontoons, the body, and the propellers over in the corner there. You're going to need these instructions. You can get those from me. And one of the first steps you'll have to do is cut out these outlines, these templates. These are going to get, so you're going to cut these out. Stay a little ways away from the line. You don't actually need to cut right on the line. This part here where it says cut this out, that's for later. That's with the scroll saw. You can leave that in there on the paper. These are going to get glued onto pieces of wood. You'll notice here it tells you how thick the material needs to be, 1.5 inches, 1/4 inch for the wing. Stabilizer 1/4 inch, floats for 3/4 inch. The instructions are here and the steps that you'll need to follow, so follow along on those. One of the first steps is to put on the appropriate thickness of wood. You see here the body is 1.5 inches and this is 1.5 inch material. I have the material pre-made for you. You just have to get the correct one, so find me to get the right stuff. You put tape down, masking tape, down on the piece of wood, and then the template gets glued onto the masking tape. That helps later. Once you cut this all out with the scroll saw, you're going to peel the tape off and you'll be left with just the outline. Now, did you get that? You need to take tape, masking tape, and put it on the surface of the wood before you glue the cutouts down. Once you have the pieces cut out, find the appropriate size material. 1.5 inch material, it says. This is the 1.5 inch material for the body. You're going to cover the surface with tape. Then you're going to use this 3M Super 77 spray adhesive. We're going to hold it about as far away as the can is long from, let's see, from the material, okay? I'm going to spray it a quick spritz across, making sure I have some paper down here first so that I don't get it all over the table. I want to just a small spray like that is all you need. I'd prefer if you'd actually get me to do that. Okay, now what we do, stick our template on there. Now it's ready for cutting. We're able to go now and use the scroll saw to cut along there. Okay, now it's time to cut them out on the scroll saws. Now if you don't know how to use a scroll saw, make sure you ask how to use it. And one thing you will have to do is copy down these safety sheets, or this safety sheet, before you use it and hand that in. So you're going to cut them out. Oh, that one doesn't work. Let's go to this one. There we go. Once you have your pieces out, cut out, you can sand them down. Now you'll notice when I was cutting them, I kept it a little ways away from the line, and that's on purpose. Now I'm able to sand it down right to my line. I did go over my line on one spot here when I did the wing. Just take your time and make sure you don't go over your line, because it's easy now to come to the sander and sand it down to your line. For these hard to reach areas like in here where you can't get against with the sander, you'll have to use the disc sander here on the side. and get in like this carefully to sand into the corner. This will probably have to get cleaned up as well with a chisel once that's done. While you're here at the sander, it's a good time to fit the stabilizer into the slot at the back. Now it's a little bit thicker than the slot, and that has to get sanded down. However, holding it with your fingers like this is a little risky, and it's probably best to be avoided. A simple way to avoid that is to clamp your piece into a clamp like this, and now I can use my hands on the clamp instead of using the my fingers so close to the belt. Sand it carefully and test the fit to see when it fits now. Here you can see I didn't sand very long, and my piece fits nicely into that slot. Hard to do with one hand, but now I know I'm going to have a good fit with my stabilizer. Once you have the stabilizer fitting nicely, you don't have to do that now either. You'll notice if you look at this fuselage that it looks a little boxy. It's the same thickness throughout. A real airplane doesn't have that. It's narrower at the front, gets wider, and then narrows down towards the tail. We're going to need to turn to our third page and cut out this shape right here, tail and nose. This is the template we're going to use. We are going to glue it on the bottom of our airplane. So we're going to put tape down, the same as we did before. We're going to glue this cutout on the bottom and cut that out to give the shape, so the fuselage doesn't look so boxy. Alright, I've got the tape down on the bottom of the plane, and I have the template glued to the bottom. I have it glued onto the tape, and I'm ready to cut it out on the scroll saw. Okay, we've got that cut out, and now you can see it does take on a bit more of an airplane look. And the only thing left is now to get rid of the saw marks by sanding it down. It may be best to sand it up like this, so you can get it right to the line, but you could also sand it on the side. The only difference here is that you're going to end up with sanding marks that go across the grain as opposed to along the grain. So I'm going to sand it. Drilling the holes in the very corner of our airplane here, but we have to know exactly where. The way to find out is you measure from the nose here, and you're going to measure back. It says on our paper, so you can go to the paper and look. Here is your fuselage, and you're going to measure back 1.5 inches and 3.5 inches, and those marks are going to go on the corners here. So you're going to measure from the front 1.5, 3.5, and make a mark right on the very corner with a pencil. There are my marks at 1.5 and 3.5, right on the corners, bottom of my fuselage, measured from the front. Corners. You need to come over to drill press number 3. It says number 3 here on the side, okay? And you're going to need this little jig that's here. What this jig does is as you lift the handle, it squeezes the fuselage in here. So you're able to bring the fuselage, align this edge here, up with the corner of this angled piece, drop it. The sandpaper here goes on this cutout area, and bring this handle up, and it'll lock this in place. What you do now is you need to release this clamp, and you're going to slide this table back and forth until when you bring the drill press down that you get the very tip of this brad point drill bit right on your mark. So it's got to be exactly right on the mark that you made and right on the corner. That's how you line it up. Okay. Once you have that, then you are ready to check the depth. Now to check the depth, you do that right here, if you can see my finger. The distance between this little silver thing and this ledge tells you how far down the bit will go. So we want about 1/2 of an inch. So we're going to lower the bit until it touches the fuselage. And then we need to set 1/2 of an inch here. I'm going to go by eye. 1/2 of an inch is there, but you may want to measure that distance in between here, okay? Once you have that, then it's simply a matter of, drilling it out. Actually, that doesn't look quite deep enough, so I'm going to give it a little more. You can see it here, how could be a little deeper. You want to have at least 3/8 of an inch kind of cutting down there. So I've increased the depth a little bit, and I'm going to drill a little deeper. Much better. Now I have to move it back and drill this hole. Whoops, and I didn't even have this clamped down. Interesting, it worked. Now, ideally you want this clamped down. So I'm going to move this over so that I'm on my point back here. Okay. It's pretty good. I'm actually going to move it down just a bit. So I'm right on my corner. That looks better. Now I'm right where I want. I'm going to take the clamp and I'm going to clamp it down. Underneath here are a couple of ribs to stabilize this table. You want to make sure that this part of the clamp is actually on that. I'll show you what I mean. If you go under here, you can see that the clamp is actually clamping on this rib. If you don't hit one of these ribs, it's not going to hold very well. All right? So I'm all set up here to do my next hole. Double check my depth, but I should be pretty good. Once you have it drilled in there, it's a matter of flipping the tail so it's on this end and drilling the other side. So you're going to loosen this off and flip it around like this. Okay, so now that you're able to drill the angles on the opposite side. Once you have the fuselage drilled with the holes, then it's time to drill the floats. The sizes are from the front 2 inches and 4 inches. So you're going to measure those from the front. The key thing to keep in mind is that these floats go on opposite sides of the plane. So the holes have to be drilled on the inside corners. So a common mistake is that people will drill them both on the left or the right sides, and you'll have the floats facing the wrong way. So you have to drill them on the right side on one and the left side on the other. Okay, now that you have it marked out where to drill the holes on the pontoon, we're going to put it in this little jig here. You need to have this stick, which has a little groove cut out of it, and usually you'll find that up there. All right. So it's important to have the straight edge here into the groove. If you have it this way, where the rounded part is in here, it's hard to keep it stable. So you're going to make sure that it's there. You may have to make some adjustments here too by spinning the plunger on the end in order to get it so that when you press it in here, it clicks over nicely, just like that, and it's holding it in place. Once you have it in place, now it's a matter of moving this to get, same as we did for the pontoon, or for the other part. Move it so it's right on the corner, Once you have it right on the corner, then you can come up here to check your depth, and you need to be a 1/2 inch here again. Once you have that, then you take your clamp and clamp it down. Whoops, no, I moved it. See, I moved it, so double check I have it back where I want it. There, perfect. Whoops. Gotta push up here first, then pull the black. Whoops, just wanna push up there and pull the black. There we go. Check that we have it. Excellent. Really nice. Now, I'll be moving this over to drill the next hole. I have to unclamp it and move the whole thing over. And then line up again, clamp it, and drill. And you do the same for the other side. Thank you. Once you've got those drilled, then you're going to take some 3/8 of an inch dowel, cut 4 pieces, 2 inches long. Okay, so here are my 4 dowels I cut. So as you can figure out, they go into these holes, and then the pontoons stick onto those, and that's what makes the airplane look like an airplane. You should have everything you need now to assemble it, more or less, but I would hesitate to do that yet because there are some shaping we're going to do. We want to round over the edges of the wings, and we want to sand out the marks from the saw. You can see them if you hold it in the right light. And you want to sand all that out and make it look as nice as possible, rounding over the edges. Same as on here, you want to round the edges here, make them more slipstream, more look like an airplane. One of the last steps we're going to do is make the propeller, and that involves cutting out this propeller outline and shaping the propeller like it's shown in the video. So same idea, I've got some masking tape on this birch plywood, and I've got my spray adhesive on it. Got my propeller here, I'm going to put that on there. I'm going to cut it out with the scroll saw. Once you've got your propeller cut out, you can find a 1/8 inch drill bit and put it in a drill, of course, and you're going to drill a hole right through the center where that mark is. We're going to make the propeller look a little more like a propeller now. What we're going to do is use the corner of the disc sander. We're just going to hold the propeller at a slight angle, and we're going to sand a propeller shape on the front of every blade. Doesn't take much effort. And then you get that kind of look. Looks a little more like a propeller now, and that's that. Take some hand sandpaper now and just sand the edges so they're nice and round, not so sharp from the saw. Okay, for this next step you're going to need to get a nail with its head cut off that is sitting in the top corner of this magnetic strip. You're going to put that into a drill. So just like this, you're actually going to use this as a drill bit, and we're going to get a piece of 1/2 inch dowel. Now this is different from what we did for the outriggers. That's 3/8 dowel, and this is 1/2 inch dowel. What we're going to do is to drill a hole right in the very center. And it's really important you follow this all the way through, because if you do this in the wrong order, it can get very difficult. Now take a file, and we're going to shape a cone is going to be the cone that is on our that holds our propeller in. It'll make sense in a minute. Okay, I've got the cone made. You can see the hole that is drilled in the end. And now what we're going to do is cut this off. So I'm going to cut it off at where the cone ends there. Hopefully you still have the drill bit that has the nail, rather, not a drill bit, because we need to drill a hole with this nail right in the end, in the center of our fuselage. You can get a small 3D 1 1/4 finishing nail from this yellow tub that's here on next to the drills. And what we do with that nail is, it is going to be the thing that holds our propeller on. So we're going to stick it through the cone, the small cone that we made. Stick the nail through there. Careful not to poke your fingers. Push that through. Okay, like this. And then you're going to put that into your propeller and stick that down into the top of your well, this is actually doesn't look that great, into your fuselage. So that's going to make your propeller. That's how. Before you do your final assembly, once you have all your parts made, be sure you spend some time sanding. Start with a rough grit like an 80, and you're going to be sanding with the grain, so that's in the direction, the long grain. So you want to avoid sanding across, because that will introduce scratches that are hard to remove. So spend some time rounding over the edges, smoothing everything, making it slightly rounded on all the corners. Start with an 80 grit, and then you'll move to a 120, and then finally a 220 to finish it off. Once you have, we're almost ready to assemble. But what we're going to do is prepare the ends of our dowels. Instead of having a sharp cut, we're going to sand them just so they're a little bit rounded and chamfered on the end. Not much, just enough to make it so they slide into the hole a little better. It makes it easy. If you just twist the dowel a little bit, then you'll get just a slight round on the end. Hold the dowel at an angle and just twist it in a circle, and you'll get that rounded a little bit, and it'll pop into the hole a lot better. All right. Once you have your pieces blown off and you've cleaned your hands, you got a clean workspace. Make sure there's no dust and dirt here. Actually, there is here, which is too bad. Blow it off, get it cleaned up. You want to, before you start stuffing glue everywhere, you want to do a dry fit. Make sure everything actually fits properly. So I'm going to assemble it all, just without any glue at all, to see how it fits. Okay, I've got the dry fit done. I'm happy with how these look and how they sit, so I'm going to take it apart again. We're going to begin to glue. I'll probably start with the pontoons. Now I want to be careful. I don't want to use too much glue because it's very hard to clean glue up out of these spaces. So I'm going to carefully put the glue around the outside edge. Right inside there. I don't want a lot gooping out because it's very hard to clean. Now I'm going to stick the pontoon or the thing and spin it around. I'll spread the glue, and then I let it sit. And do the same on the back, and I'm going to do the same on all the other ones. Okay, these are glued in. I'm taking a look for any spots where there might be glue oozing out on the bottoms. Here's a little spot right there. I'm just going to clean that up. You really want to be careful not to have glue smeared all over because it seals the surface, and if you want to stain this, it'll be hard to stain. I'm going to glue in the other pieces now. Trying to get some glue on the inside there. Take the time, you got to line it up. Take any glue off. Get it lined up exactly where you want it. If you do get a bit of glue blobbing out, be sure you get a paper towel with a little bit of water on it, just damp slightly, and wipe that off. That's the best way to get that off the surface. And I have a little bit right in there that I'm going to wipe out. Try to get it so it doesn't soak into the wood in case you do decide to stain it. Staining is where you put a color on the wood. Any glue blobs you want to wipe off. Okay, now take it. Now that's that. Now when I put on the wing, I held it there for about a minute, and now I'm just going to let it sit. Next step will be doing any wood burning design on there you want, and then we'll be applying the finish. Once you've got that all sanded and your plane is all smooth and assembled, and you've got the wood burning done on there that you want to do, you can design it however you want. Then it's time to put a finish on here, and that means spraying a coating on here that will protect it from stains and discoloration over time. So to do that, we're going to use a spray gun, because it's very hard to do this with a brush. Now let me flip this around. So when I mean a spray gun, you're going to have to ask me for it. It's a little gun like this that hooks up, has finish in the bottom, hooks up to a compressor, and you pull the trigger and it sprays finish out. Now it's easy to overdo it with this, and if you spray and sit and hold it in one spot for a long time, you're going to overdo it. So the first thing you'll do is you'll spray the bottom. Make sure it's all clean, and you're just going to mist and spray the bottom of your plane, the hard to reach areas. You don't want to have it so there's drips forming. And to hang it up, you can hang it on this little hook here that's on this paint can. Now, just so you know, we're at the front of the classroom beside the blue cabinets. This is the spray booth. There's air moving up this vent, so you have to spray it up there. So now once you've done the bottom of it, you can look, and it won't be like glossy yet. It takes a little bit of time for that to happen. What this does is seals it. Now it looks like I could do a little more down here. It's coming out nicely in a fine mist, and that's what we're after. It's actually coming out nice and slow, so that's what I'm after. Now I'm going to flip it over and do the top. I'm making sure to put it on these triangles so that it doesn't stick to the floor or to the table. So now I can carefully spray everywhere, and this is a water-based spray that is not harmful. So we are looking to make sure we get it coated everywhere. Once you've done that once, you let it dry, probably at least till the next day, or it could be 2 hours. You sand it gently with 220 again, and then you repeat the spraying. Maybe do this 3 or 4 times. Make sure you also spray your propeller while you have it here. Once you've sprayed the airplane once, you come back once it's dry, usually a couple of hours, and you're going to sand it again with 220 grit sandpaper. So you get the sandpaper, you look on the back, you find the 220. Hard to see there, but this is 220 grit, and you sand the whole thing. What that does is it gets rid of those little rough spots that form. When the finish hardens on there, it'll sometimes make wood fibers stick up, and they harden like that, and it becomes rough. You have to sand that down again, spray it off with air, and then you put another finish on it. Spritz it with that gun and do the same process. You're going to do that maybe at least two, maybe 3, 4 times. 4 times is probably best. And once you have that done, then you take your propeller out, stick your propeller in, and then, yeah, can't do this one-handed. Then you're done your airplane. Once it's all finished, then you're going to mark it and take it home and happy flying.